Yesterday, we were talking about boundaries between different domains and something like the windowsill that's in the picture here. If there's a ledge in front of a window, private domain behind the window, public domain outside the window, and moving objects in and out of that space on Shabbat. We're still in the boundary between different domains, and we're going to learn three mishnayot, which are mirror images of each other and which actually contain mirror images inside them. So we'll see this mirror structure inside the Mishnah, and we're going to see it from Mishnah to Mishnah, and they all relate to private and public domains. And we're going to start off actually with bodily functions. Lo ya'amod adam b'reshut hayachid v'yashtin b'reshut harabim. A person shouldn't stand in a private domain and urinate in a public domain. So we're passing liquid from the private into the public. And of course, we've already seen wastewater passing from the courtyards into the public domain. So we know that we already know this is an area where the rabbis are thinking about it. And of course, in the kind of village that the people of the Mishnah live in, of course, they don't have sewerage. So this is an issue. And it works the other way too. Maybe standing in a public domain and urinating into a private domain. And similarly, he may not spit. Spitting is that so that the Mishnah, for as far as the Mishnah is concerned, any kind of bodily fluid transfer, if it's coming from one domain into the other domain, it's forbidden on Shabbat. And Rabbi Yehuda actually gives a measure of distance. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, af mishenit lashru kol b'fiv lo yelech arba amot ad she'erok. Rabbi Yehuda says once a person's spit is detached in his mouth, in other words, once you've got some spit sitting in your mouth, we don't walk 4 cubits before spitting out. Now, the halacha doesn't go according to Rabbi Yehuda, but the length of 4 cubits is really interesting. And we've seen before that according to Rabbi Eliezer, actually, but Rabbi Yehuda seems to have the same measure in his head. We've seen, according to Rabbi Eliezer, that a person takes 4 amot. The kind of space occupied by a person is 4 amot. I think the time you wait after the tefillah before you return to your place is the time it takes to walk 4 amot, almost to leave your own space, to, if you like, come out of your space. But anyway, 4 amot are the space of a human being. And so if you've walked 4 amot and you haven't spat out, you've effectively left your personal space. That seems to be what Rav Yehuda is talking about, at least in terms of his spatial reasoning in this Mishnah. And even though the halacha doesn't go according to to Rabbi Yehuda, I think the spatial reasoning is something that we've seen elsewhere and is worth hanging on to. Now, the Mishnah is then going to go and talk about other kinds of boundaries. And up top, we had the picture of the window and the windowsill. That was above ground. Now, what if we had something like a bar? And I brought you a picture of an outside bar here. Please don't pay too much attention to the roof, because we want to think about an outside bar where the outside's really outside. So the bar stools are outside and the kitchen is inside. And so you could reach from inside to outside or outside to inside, and that might allow you to, for example, stand inside and drink from outside, or vice versa. And that's the kind of situation that the Mishnah is going to describe next. Lo ya'amod adam b'reshut hayachid ve'yishteh b'reshut harabim. A person shouldn't stand in a private domain and drink in the public domain. And so you can see this is a mirror image of the previous Mishnah. Lo ya'amod adam b'reshut hayachid ve'yashtin b'reshut harabim. A person shouldn't stand in a private domain and urinate into a public domain. And in the Mishnah 6, we got the opposite way around. The fluid is not going out, it's coming in. A person shouldn't stand in a private domain and drink in the public domain, or vice versa, or stand in the public domain and drink in a private domain. It goes both ways. But in this case, of course, there's an option. Unless unless he puts his head and the greater part of his body into the domain in which he drinks. In other words, the Mishnah seems to be asking for him to reach over and put his head into the domain where he's going to drink. So he can, if you like, bring the liquid across once he's drunk it, but he can't bring the liquid across with his hand and drink it. And by the way, this is the plain meaning of the Mishnah that we've learned, but the Gemara seems to interpret, actually the view of the Gemara is you can do this. You can reach into the public domain and drink. And the Bartanura is quoting, I brought you the Bartanura on the source sheet, but the Bartanura is quoting the Gemara and says, actually, all this is to do with utensils which are valuable and require his attention. In other words, utensils that you wouldn't want to just leave outside on Shabbat, as perhaps someone will carry them around. If they're valuable, you might want to carry them in or carry them out. But the Bartanura says, and he's quoting the Gemara, with utensils that don't require attention, it's permissible to drink. It's permissible to do this. So the Gemara seems to overturn the plain meaning of the Mishnah. And the Mishnah then goes on to say, V'chen begat. And again, the Gemara overturns the plain meaning of this Mishnah and says, here we're talking about maaser, that if you just stand outside the gat and stick your head in and drink a little bit of wine, you can do it without taking truma maaser. And then, again, the Gemara, this does not make any sense with the pshat of the Mishnah, but this is the way the Gemara reads it. And then going back to water and domains, a person can collect water from a gutter. This is water falling from a gutter. So if you can visualize rain on a roof, the water's falling from the gutter. But he collects it at a level below 10 hands breadths. So the water is going to be falling into, well, we know that the level above 10 hands breadths is a makom patur. But once it falls below 10 hands breadths, I guess that is already in the whatever reshut that the person is standing in. So he's not transferring it. He's not transferring it from upper to lower. And from a pipe, he can actually drink in any way he likes, because the pipe transfers directly into whatever reshut it gives out into. So this is not like the water that's falling out of it's falling out of the private domain of the roof down into the public space. So he can drink from any way he likes. And then we've got this mirror image of urinating and drinking, and we're going to follow up with taking and giving water from and to a cistern. So this is a cistern in the public domain, but it's got an embankment, or I would say a ridge, it's got a fence is the wrong word. What do we have around an embankment? Around a cistern, we have a barrier, basically, a trench. My words are failing me. It's got a wall. Maybe the wall is the best way. We got a cistern in the public domain, and it's got a wall all around it, so to stop people falling in and to hold the water in. And the wall is greater than 10 hands breadths high. It's more than 10 tefachim high. And we know once we're in over 10 hands breadths, we're actually in free space. So theoretically, if you are also hanging in free space, maybe you're coming from a window above it, you can just lift the water from the cistern into your house. And that's essentially what the Mishnah says. Bor b'rshut harabim. So you've got a well, a cistern in a public space. And its wall around it is 10 handsbreadths high. So it's in public space, this cistern. Chalon she'al gabavs. And now we've got a window which is above it. Mumalin hemenu b'Shabbat. We can fill up from it on Shabbat. So I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that the cistern's in public space. The cistern itself is a private space, but it's sitting 10 tefachim above the ground. So as we're transferring from the private space of the cistern to the private space of the window, we're going through free space, and we can do that on Shabbat, a bit like throwing from a balcony to another balcony more than 10 tefachim above the ground, which we discussed in the Mishnah of Shabbat. We can fill up from the cistern on Shabbat. And the other way around, these are all mirror image mishnayot. We're basically taking water in and we're going to give water out. So we got a garbage heap in the public space. Gvoha asrat tefachim, and it's 10 tefachim high. So again, it's its own space. And we can pour rubbish water on it from Shabbat, from a window above it. And that's exactly the same halacha, but it's the other way round.